Heads up. Welcome back from the leg stretching break. We will serve the snacks to you in your seats once they arrive. It has been said that today is the day of quotes. Here is another one. Art is the language of the soul, and spirituality is breath. Together they reveal truths too deep for words, bringing the seen, bridging the seen and the unseen. Inspiring. To continue with our conversation, we'll have our next speaker. He is a multiple award-winning film and stage actor with over 22 years experience in various forms of theater and screen productions. He has a first-class Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from this august School of Performing Arts at this premier University of Ghana, Legon. He further obtained a Master of Arts degree in Dramatic Arts with distinction from the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. He is currently a lecturer in acting at the National Film and Television Institute, NAFTI, teaching at the bachelor's degree, the diploma level, and also handling acting certificate courses at the same institution. As it is the case that the art of the artist is inseparable from his spirituality in this particular case. May we, with a round of applause, welcome the presentation of Mr. Ajete Annan, aka Pusha. Who looks like a bad boy on screen. Let's see who he really is. Welcome.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you so much. And standing on all existing protocols, I want to say a very good morning to you all. I was just discussing with my senior at Unimac IFT, NAFTI, that no matter the many years of standing on the stage and being in front of the camera, I still feel the jitters, some nervousness when I have to face people. And especially in this context, my seniors in academia, my seniors in faith. And so I find this very humbling, honoring to be able to share a part of my journey with you on this topic, which I have titled Prioritizing Character, a Weapon in Engaging the Arts and Popular Culture. And so this is just going to be a snapshot of what has been born out of my experience and journey, so that I believe that at the end of it, we can relate, we'll be inspired, and probably I might have provoked you in certain aspects. And so kindly stay with me. So prioritizing character, a weapon in engaging the arts in popular culture. Engaging the arts in popular culture requires a robust relationship between the arts and Christian faith. As a Christian in this arena, any attempt to enhance the existing state of affairs without a critical evaluation of the nature of such a relationship would be an act of playing the ostrich. There is no denying the fact that advancement in technology has contributed to making our world a smaller stage. But so has the exposure to popular cultures been made easily accessible, where the good, the bad, the ugly continue to influence each other with one craving for supremacy, an ongoing tug of war where the Christian faith must attain dominance. The strength of popular culture is embedded in the areas of literature, music, television and film, fashion and lifestyle, and social media, and the internet. Now, these strong pillars thrive on dynamism and therefore the need for intentional and deliberate engagement. The influence and impact of these pillars cannot be overemphasized. The forerunners of these pillars are easily transported into the spotlight, garnering massive followings who mimic and reflect their idol. And at this point, I just want to recall, just remembering messages that come into my inbox, and some of which include, "Oh, Ajete, what you're wearing, I would want to wear. Who is your tailor," for example. And then some also come in the form of, "Oh, where you're seated, that you took that shot. I would love to go there and also have that image." If it's something that I've captured in the image where there's a prop I'm using, people want to just use and be a part of and connect with me in that sense. And so trying to mimic and sort of reflect what they see in me. We should agree that no specific field is exclusively reserved for any group deemed unworthy. The days of hesitating due to the secular dominance of a specific pillar are over. We need to shine light into spaces considered dark. We must engage thoughtfully rather than blindly or in the same way that the world does. We need a weapon, one that has outlived us and will continue to do so. Now, one significant weapon has been loud in my experience and journey in the arts and the engagement with popular culture, which is the quality of character. As simple a word as it is, it forms the very basis upon which a solid foundation of truly positive impact is built. We talk of the likes of Paul, Noah, Moses, John the Baptist, etc., effective in outreach and great leadership, learned obedience to the only high power there is, that is God, brandish truthfulness, even in the face of personal hurt, and regarding Jesus laying down his life in unconditional love, for while we were yet sinners, Christ died for you and me. That done, the condition is to receive him and allow him to shape your character. I'm always looking for an excuse or an opportunity to say this. You're being thrown into the spotlight largely due to the character I played in Pusher in a reproductive health drama series. I did learn that the task was not just about exhibiting skill or talent, but I needed a grounded character as the foundation. And so when talent or skill have been exhibited and achieved for the day, and a lady fan avails herself of conversations exclusively for spouses committed to each other, the test of character will determine if I entertain such or draw a clear boundary. The latter was what I struggled with, indicating a weak character base. Beyond the accolades, awards, praises, there was a vacuum within that nothing could fill, especially when I not only professed my faith openly, but I yearned for all my following to see me and assess me through the lens of the Christian faith. My rude awakening was that I cannot be a part of one of the pillars of society within the arts and rely on a character that lacks scruples. In the same way, I cannot make motivational posts on my social media platforms on great virtues or values and then be found directing all my 5 fingers of my left hand towards a cab driver who rudely crossed me in traffic due to intolerance or of self-control. Part of the reason was why I did put out my first book out there, and it wasn't because I wanted to follow in the footsteps of the one before me, who had gone before me. If you all remember of one Yvonne Nelson, who was an actress who put out a book. My motivation was because I needed my following. I needed my fellow actors and actresses, especially the young and potentials, who were either in the spotlight or were about to make a step into it, to know the man behind the characters that they know. I realized that they knew the characters in so many respects, fell in love with the characters that I played, but had a different perception of who Ajeti Anan was. For many, oh, he can do no wrong. They have this idealist, perfect scenario, perfect imagination of who Ajeti Anan was, and I thought that that was dangerous. My journey, I've seen as not a mistake, has been calculated, and I see it as a calling into a field that need a lot of mentors, that need a lot of inspiration, because you can only appreciate what we go through when you're under the spotlight. The pressures that we not only put on ourselves as artists, but also what society puts on us. And there are pressures that can shake any foundation. It may not topple over, but can shake that foundation. And that was the case in which I found myself. And so for me, it was important that the book, which I titled Ajeti Anan, which thrived on faith, imperfections, and resilience, was a message to my young artists who found this, who were also under the spotlight, who were making or about to make choices that have landed me in trouble before, for it to be a marker to make better choices. And also for those who felt that, oh, well, it's Ajeti Anan, I can't go before him and ask him stupid questions. How did you deal with the ladies when they were all over you and all that, because they felt that I'm so perfect, Ajeti, won't have those challenges. And so that also gave them some inspiration and courage for them now to engage with me. Well, look, Ajeti, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, and then I can, because now I have come out to say that, oh, and for most of them, they were surprised and shocked, and some of my revelations in the book, and it was intentional and deliberate. I had a lot of oppositions, even from close family members, because they thought that I was staining the Anan name, even though our predecessors had done that already. I mean, look, if you're born into a family of 8 uncles and aunties, and out of the 8, only 1 marriage is surviving till date, and even with that is struggling, where they are born 1s, here born 2s, here born 3 out of wedlock, all over messy, then you know that there's a cycle that will repeat itself on the next generation, and therefore I found those challenges very real in the, in my work life. And so these were real things that we're dealing with, to digress a bit, but then it was important for me to come out in the open so that people would make informed choices that are better to begin to shape the industry in which we find ourselves. My weapon needed sharpening. Throughout the pages of history, we have witnessed how developing great character and being consistent doing that have resulted in good results. But failure to uphold same has also resulted in undesirable consequences. For all of Moses' leadership, a character flaw cost him the promised land. Despite the accolade, a man after God's own heart, David could not avert the pending consequences for taking Bathsheba from a murdered husband. it is very obvious that while we have evolved, advanced, and progressed technologically, academically, and so on as a human species, human character, in my estimation, has largely rather deteriorated. Pronounced state of homosexuality, intolerance, wars, etc., etc. While acquisition of knowledge is paramount in the face of the art and popular culture, I dare say we shoot ourselves in the foot when we do not first prioritize character, not forgetting that it is not the acquisition of knowledge, but the application of it that determines the quality of results, and great character is the weapon that determines the desired results. And so the A-list scholar and chartered accountant from Oxford, from Yale, the University of Ghana, or the Akrofi-Christaller Institute for short, can become a threat to the system or institution if his application of the acquired knowledge in his field is not grounded in great character. In a space, hallelujah, in a space that abounds with talent, while knowledge acquisition and excellence in delivery cannot be sacrificed through the Christian faith lens, the quality of character must be the priority. This is not a one-man fight or show. All pillars under popular culture must be engaged from every angle, inspired by the mantra, and here I would say, in the spirit of quotations, I hope that this may also be considered as a quotation after verification, though. But inspired by the mantra that prioritizing character is a higher calling than exhibiting skill. The drive for this must be aggressive and unapologetic. We need to lead the numbers and following towards not just engaging the arts and popular culture, but also towards dominating and influencing trends within the space. While our spiritual standing must not be in doubt, we cannot also hide behind the word or misapply it and hold God accountable with, "Your word is your bond." God cannot lie when the quality of our character is questionable. So I say to a brother who professes, "No weapon formed against me will prosper." Well, I beg to differ, my brother, that the weapons will prosper and eliminate you due to a silent caveat, that your great character or otherwise will largely influence your protection, or should I say your protectability. Lest not self-destruct. Hone your character. When all is said and done, we definitely cannot eliminate the arts or popular culture. They will continue to evolve and advance, but into what or towards which direction respectively? Character must remain constant and entrenched deeply to have any chance of quality engagement, influence, or dominance in an unpredictable but very powerful terrain. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was expecting a little bit more. I was waiting for the rest. And I think we will discover the rest in our discussion. It's a provocative idea. You must hone your character. And I think maybe it might be even more provocative for Christians and for Christian leaders, because we are very adept at quoting scripture, and we're very adept at acting Christian-like, and we're very adept at anything having to do with the church. I don't think we necessarily pay attention to our character. And I don't mean that just in the sense of, you're a good person, you're an upstanding person, but I mean in one-on-one relationship with colleagues, with students, with staff. So I would like to have you discuss more. What do you mean, one, by honing your character? And what do you mean by prioritizing character instead of exhibiting skill? I think this is very worthy, especially for Christian leaders who always, I think, need to be reminded. So I'm very grateful for that. So we will open the discussion up so that we can engage these ideas of character, honing character, prioritizing character instead of skill in the arts, but certainly in theology, in ministry, in preaching, in being a missionary. I met some missionaries in my time that if they had come to me to tell me about Christ, I would not be a Christian today. Because their character, they disturb me profoundly. So this is a discussion, a timely discussion that we need to have. So we're open the floor, questions, comments, points of clarity. Please, you're welcome.
Hi, my good friend, Pa Aji, I'm not wondering to see you with this wonderful information. I quite remember your days in this house as a student.
Yeah.
My question to you, with all this talent, brain, wisdom that we have, what plan do you have for School of Performing Arts? Thank you.
What brand do I have for the School of Performing Arts?
What brand?
Plans. Was it plans?
What plans do you have?
School of Performing Arts.
Can I answer my question? Is that a question for a donation? Is that a question for some kind of financial support? Because I would suggest that you discuss that over tea or coffee. And I would suggest that you seek to engage the ideas that have been presented here in terms of theology and the arts. And then the support and donations, you can do that in your private time over a cup of tea when he might be more open to engage that topic. What do you think? Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments pertaining to the presentation that has been made here today? Thank you. Yes, I'll hear from Mrs. Settles and then from the sister in the back.
Well, I'm just saying that because you had those questions for him. So if we can hear more on your questions, I think that would be helpful. Yes.
Questions I had, because as I said, I was waiting for more. And I took notes as you were speaking. You spoke about honing character.
Yeah.
And I definitely think we need that in the church and in leadership in the church. Then you also spoke about prioritizing character instead of exhibiting skill, which I think is right on point, particularly if you're engaging popular arts, but especially if you are a quote-unquote man of God or a teacher of God or a missionary of God. You definitely need that. And then I have my other comments that I was making in terms of how do you do this without being a courageous person, without being a person with great bravery, right? So I think, can you unpack it? Can you elaborate a little bit more?
I think that one of the things that I have, apart from struggling with and then subsequently learning, was that in the world of film or acting, when we go on set for productions, there is a culture that that is grounded. And so if you are a Christian, if you are whatever, there are, when it comes to certain departments, you need to subscribe because that is what is done. And so you come in there, you deliver as an artist in front of the camera, you exhibit your qualities in the role that you've been given. But when camera is off, you can then go back into the departments of, flirting with a girl, or touching somebody somewhere that is, not appropriate, because these are what makes us happy in this setting. Okay, and then if you don't subscribe, then it feels like you are the spy or the odd one out. And so many would have to subscribe, not because they want to, but it's a getaway kind of thing. I can't be seen in the open doing these things, but this is a safe space that we've created that unconsciously is repeated over time. And all too soon, it becomes the normal that we don't, what is it? There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not killing anybody. It's okay. And so it's very, very important that whilst you realize that we are not just made of actors and actresses, there are people who come in and out. And what we're doing is that the message we're sending is that, well, we preach, but we don't practice what we preach in that sense. And that I have found also relatably in the church, where I see people who stand behind the pulpit, who I know personally, whose lifestyle is nothing related to what they preach, unknowingly to a larger congregation who see them as how they saw Ajete Anan, who play the characters. And so we must also be willing to share, and I have a challenge, and why I'm unpacking this, because it was also born out of the challenge that I had with people who would not share their challenges, but only share their hallmarks and their greatness. And therefore, you give this illusion of you can do no wrong, you are the head pastor, and therefore it goes down to when the pastor says I should do this, it must be a statement from God, and therefore I must subscribe to it, even though you know that the Bible is against or contradicts what he is saying. And so at every step of the way, character is being questioned as to, we may have all the skill and all the knowledge that we could impart, but then if we don't have that base, that grounding as in a place of having a grounded character, in that sense, you must be the example of what you are preaching or imparting. And if we do not do that, then there's a disconnection. And so for me, when we are in the space, I find a way of, okay, I'm supposed to deliver as a performer, as an artist, but my Christian faith has a role to play in all this. And I think that is what brings about the conflict, because people are not, they're not practicing Christians. And from, unfortunately, some of my colleagues who may say, may put on their pages that they're Christian and give you all the quotations, practically, behind the scenes, they're nothing. So it's more of show business, and not the challenging ourselves even by the messages that we're putting out there. Many a time what happens is that when we impersonate or embody characters, and we want the audience or our target audience to take a message, we don't allow the transformation that we expect the target audience to go through. We sort of build some kind of a boundary where it doesn't affect us. And so we're preaching to the public and expecting a change or result, but we are not changing. We can't be changed by that, because we are not, we are protected from being transformed by the characters that we're playing. That is, if it's supposed to, impact positively, for us to reconsider on the subject of maybe abuse and the implications of you hitting your wife as a man, and what it does to the children. What that doesn't impact us, because we are under we are the masters. We are above that, and so all of this has questioned my motives, and my Christian faith has questioned that. And in most cases, even though I found myself playing, I realized that the play has to happen in a boundary that God has set. Because the moment I step beyond that, then there's going to be a conflict between my Christian faith and the skill that I'm exhibiting. And that should always be a connection and a marriage. Because the quality, and I always say that when two people sit for an exam and both have 100%, it's not the result that matters for me, it's the quality of the process. And so character will be found in, did I study on my own, make all the sacrifices, the research, and then go sit for the exam? Or with you didn't study, you just got a paper and tucked it under your shorts, and in the exam, we just copied and put down the answers. We all had 100%, but the quality of the process is what for me is important. And that is where the test of character is. And that's why I will talk about prioritizing character. And I don't know whether I've been able to expatiate a bit on this.
I wanted to thank Mr. Jete Anand for coming in here and speaking about character. We don't hear that very often these days. Predominantly in our popular culture, all we hear is, for the most part, talking about skill, as you rightly pointed out, improving one's skill. And we also hear a lot about the hustler culture. And by the hustler culture, the way I understand it is doing whatever you have to do to make things work. And that really makes one think about character in terms of what is one's moral grounding. And so I'm very grateful that you spoke about something which is not a very popular topic today, to provoke us to think and question our own moral foundation. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that for me, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing who you are. But I'm thinking, as you spoke, I was just thinking of the need for discipleship in that space of artists in popular culture. Because really, how do you hone character? It goes back to the process of discipleship. And is there anybody looking out for those artists in that regard? And are there support systems for Christian artists to engage each other and the Word of God, which ultimately is the one that transforms us? So how do we hone character? So I think for me, it goes back to the question of discipleship. And I'm just wondering, is there anything at all out there for people like you who are struggling to balance? Because recently I was in a space with performers, and I just felt so out of things. All the glitz and glum and all the artifice. I was like, I wouldn't survive in this kind of thing for too long. And then I met a Christian who said, yes, we come and do our part and then we go. These people are not church people. And I'm like, so how, I don't know, how, I hope you understand my question.
Yeah, I do. If I'm to comment on that, I think it goes back to, you can't, and I think that's one of the challenges, is that once we say we are members of the faith, where's the evidence? If we don't allow the word to dictate, then there's a disconnection. And that is why we can jump in and out. But then the calling then is not achieved, because I can go into a certain space and they are, they seem very secular, they're not practicing, and I can go just do my bit and move out. But how, that is like still sitting on the fence. And I think that those are the spaces that we need to impact. And so you become vulnerable, and in some cases, it's even a danger, because you are labeled. And the challenge too is that, especially when you find yourself being in the spotlight, and yet everything that God talks about or Christ talks about of excellence and what that would bring onto you in terms of he supplies all our needs according to his riches in Christ Jesus, then I should be rich. Shouldn't I be? But you realize that for most artists that is not the case, and those who are doing all the sacrificial work, those who are practicing daily as Christians, that is not really that for most people. And so they would make a case, yeah, well, you're doing all that, and yet look, I have the money, I have the dough, I'm practicing, but God has not taken that away from me. I don't think that I'm doing anything bad or wrong. Otherwise, I should be punished for that, and I should suffer the consequences for that. And so it goes down to, what are we not getting right, and allowing the word and to really transform us so that we can impact. Because as for impact or impartation, I always say there's the quality of it, because knowledge abounds. And today, now we're having different interpretations of certain quotations in the Bibles, and people are using all manner of things because there's a fundamental motive behind it. And if those motives are not challenged or tested, then we would have a confusion. And unfortunately, the larger numbers are those who do not subscribe to our faith dictates. And so, yeah.
In the corner.
All right. Thank you very much, brother. And thank you for becoming the face of Ghana. I met you in Amsterdam last year, if you remember. You were going that direction. I was coming here, and I said, I know this face. Thank you. All right, so I wasn't here at the beginning, but if I can understand what I heard at the end correctly, to tell me if I'm trying to get what you are trying to say. That the arts is make-believe. It's something that in Ghana, when we say, oh yeah, concert, like you're doing concert, we mean you are not being serious, because we all feel that anything that is staged is not real. That's what we think. So people don't take artists seriously, right? So what I hear you say is that if we don't hone character and let people know who we truly are, what we stand for, they will not take what we do seriously, because they will think that it's just a continuation of who we are, what we do. The concept that we do, So if somebody sees Reverend Settles and the way he lives his life, that he's very upright man, he's straight and that kind of thing, and he's acting, then they will take him serious, because they know that what he's doing is serious, because they know who he truly is. So what I hear you say is that because the art is make-believe and people think that it's not real, and it's a way of also educating us and all of that, that we should live our lives in such a way that when we are educating people through the art, they will take us seriously. Is that correct?
I think that in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that we have to justify our calling when we say that we are Christians. And I think that's where the conversation begins, because then you could stand outside of not being a Christian, and I don't think that you'd have anybody challenging your lifestyle or the choices that you make. But once you come under the canopy of I'm a Christian and I'm practicing Christian, then that should always influence what you do in terms of your field and exhibiting it. And that's where, for me, I would say that because, and also most importantly, because of what social media has become, where we're projected into spaces just by a click of a button, it's important that people get to know. And of course, because we're put in the spotlight, people subscribe to us. People when we even cough, there are people who want to cough, imitate that cough, as that's how they want to cough, because that's how Ajeti Anan coughs. And so we do have some kind of holding on these persons that even when we feed them poison, they will drink it. You know, we don't even see the size of this even in these parts, but even in, you know, look at the rest of the world. We've seen the likes of Michael Jackson when they just appear and people faint and they have to rush them to the hospitals. These are the kind of holding that they have on people. And because of this space and this medium, as Christians, we must ensure that whilst it's an opportunity we have to sort of continue to expand the faith and do the works of God in having a hold on a person, but also feeding them good food, good nutrients, good word that would, you know, and empower them to be able to live as children of God. And so, you know, in many angles, these are what I'm saying through what I said. Yeah.
Yes, please. Now you see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ajiti. I admire you so much as a young performing artist coming. And I want to ask, this came up in the first presentation. I want to ask how you deal with certain roles that conflicts with your religion, because there are some roles that spiritually you have to, and you know, to make a character real, you have to involve yourself, embody the character to be able to bring out what people will believe what you are playing. So how do you deal with such characters? I love it when you share your experience. I take it very serious. You have no idea. So please share with me. Thank you.
So let me give you a typical example. So I had this script somewhere in the late 90s, actually, on homosexuality, and I was supposed to play this gay guy. And this was a time where it was still a no. I mean, the subject itself, you know, you can't even discuss it. And I belong to this family background of, we can't talk about sex, we can't talk about homosexuality or gay, none of that. You know, so we are picking information from the street and from people, different influences and all that. For me, the understanding is that somebody definitely has to play Judas Iscariot if we're telling about Jesus. You know, you can't leave that guy out. And so the fact that I'm playing the bad guy doesn't mean I am the bad guy. But that will be tested in the quality of life behind the screen. You know, and so that's always been assessed. For me, I don't have a problem playing a homosexual or gay, but what is the message? If the message is just to, based on this, your role, what we intend to do is that we want to propagate the message that homosexuality is okay, you know, we can still, you know, we should let them be. Then I have a problem, because then my Christian faith will kick in. That there's a problem. So I'd want us to negotiate. We'd have to talk about it. I will play it based on, if this is the message, then, you know, this is what we'll do. If you don't have an answer and it's a good subject to talk about, and it to be sensational enough, and it doesn't address certain key issues, then we'll have a problem. So that negotiation would have to happen. And it doesn't matter if you're giving me all the rice in China. I need to be sure that my Christian faith, because that for me is why I'm in this, and therefore it must not be conflicted or compromised.
Yeah. If you permit me to call you Pusher,
please go ahead.
Because I want to push the discipleship question.
Yes.
I'll be glad to know your testimony, how you came to the saving knowledge of Christ. Who discipled you, or who is your mentor? But better still, your colleagues with whom you featured. I don't remember the title of
Things to Do for Love.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it.
Where are they? what is their Christian faith as at now?
Right.
And what are you doing personally
Yeah.
to reach out to them if they have not?
I like that. So at every stage of my life, I'd had different mentors, but with, of course, my Christian faith, the first person that I had looked up to was my mom, because somehow my dad served as one of the reasons why I decided to be a practicing Christian, because he led with example, but the results were not anything to write home about. And he led with example about the other side of example. And so we couldn't connect in that way, even though his choices and decisions influenced me in a certain way. And so she was my first, example. And for me, it wasn't just about we had a tradition of going to church, but I wanted something beyond that, of having a relationship with this figure, the spiritual being, and whom I read about every day. And that opened me up to knowledge and wisdom. And therefore, it was a personal decision to really engage in that. It was not all rosy, of course, because at every point I've been challenged. And if you understand what family patterns are, our challenge would be relationships. And as has been proven with my uncles and aunties, And so I knew that at every point in my life, I would have those challenges. And those were the biggest challenges that I've ever had. And to this day, it's not like you overcome a certain challenge and so, then that's it, you've crossed the barrier. But it comes in different forms and shapes. And when you think that you've overcome, then something comes up again. So it's a daily, trying to not feel or think that you've arrived, because the next test is going to come. And that's why we need to allow that word to continue on a daily basis, renew us and empower us. And so that was what led me to my saving, giving my life. And my colleagues, fortunately, what I've inspired is that we take advantage of social media. And therefore, we've been able to connect to all those who are not here, other parts of the world, and where we're trying to show interest in what each other is doing, attend social events, and rub off each other. There's some who we have connected to who were hiding because they were going through a lot of challenges. They've made certain bad choices and has had an impact on them, and we've been able to connect with them and really pull them up. And so having taken advantage of these social media chat groups have helped us. Of course there's still some stubborn ones, but our daily living is a testament, and it gives them a first-hand example of, oh yeah, these guys are consistent with what they do, and we're hoping that gradually all will come into the saving grace of the power of Jesus. Yeah.
Okay, we hear from Dr. Gazy and then from the sister in the back. Can we hear from please?
Oh, thank you very much, Onupa. I'm just wondering, you made mention of something about China, if the storyline, but I'm also concerned with the detail. So the storyline is good,
Yeah.
but how do you negotiate? And I'm not being personal. I want you to kind of challenge us, what people like you go through.
Yeah.
With the details, because some of the movies are not family friendly.
Right.
There may be good storyline,
Exactly.
but so I'm wondering how you negotiate. Sometimes the producer or screenwriter will want this, but you think the storyline is good, but the detail, how do you sometimes negotiate that?
Oh yes, we do negotiate. For example, there was a particular scene, and I'm happy that you told me that you had seen a devil in the detail, and this was Shirley Frimpong, so one of Ghana's top directors, and who, when she says something, people would have to just act. But the challenge we had with a particular scene was an intimate scene where one of the selling points of it was to be a bit graphic. And because that also has its audience, and it will add to the box office and all that. Now, the unfortunate thing for her was that it was me in the mix, and then we had to negotiate. Now, before the scene was shot, I had that conversation with her. That word on paper, we can't translate that into actual images. And so we need to find a way of going about it. And she said, okay, we'll do it this way. Camera angles, tilt, etc., and then positioning would make it believe that we are actually, involved intimately. And it was said and done. But on the actual shoot, that communication had not gone to my fellow actress. And she was a first timer. And so she wanted to impress Shirley. So she was going all out. So while she was going all out, I was pulling back. And so it felt very awkward, unbelievable. And at a point, I just screamed, yes. And Shirley panicked, and therefore we had to halt, and then we had to have the conversation again. I said, Shirley, you hadn't communicated to the girl that this, and she said, oh, I'm sorry about that. Then we had to re-engage and then make it a bit, because I believe that, it's an art, and we don't have to be graphic. And most times, just by the way I look at somebody, the way we connect, the chemistry alone should tell us that these people are in love. And so we don't need to, graphically show everything in images, because it has its own place. Even, and I'm also protecting myself, not just as an artist, but also beyond the artist, Ajiti Anand. With the baggage that I have and the cycle that can be committed, sometimes when we connect in that way, physically, on set, even when the camera says cut, we're still continuing the journey beyond the cut. So we find ourselves holding hands and communicating because some chemistry has been. And that is why, there's a rule that when you are not married, don't do things that married people do. Because there's a connection that happens in the spiritual realm that has implications in the physical. And so when that happens, even though you think that you're playing a role, familiarity sets in, and then it develops into something behind the scenes. And if you know most of especially in the Hollywood spaces, most relationships starts with relationships on set. And if we don't put in those personal boundaries, and so personal boundaries are one of the things, having boundaries, and has helped me in negotiating. Sometimes you lose bigger gigs. For example, I had this alcoholic beverage company who wanted me to do something huge, and it was a huge budget for me. It was the biggest I'd ever received. But then I was mentoring young people at church. I was facilitating, and I kept telling them, you boys, no drink, no alcohol, no girls, no drugs, just focus on your. And then I had this image of, if I take this job and the money is good, we've been praying for manna for that, and then it comes, a telephone call. If I go in and take this deal, all these young people are seeing as a contradiction of what I keep telling them, because that image of me drinking alcohol defeats everything. And so I can walk into Sunday and they're like, hey, Uncle G, they say we shouldn't drink. We saw you drinking. And so I have to weigh. I'm thinking of my pocket, but then I'm putting other lives in danger because they're looking up so much to me. And so that is where sometimes you may lose, but of course the reward for passing that test, it's priceless, because there's ripples of it. It's like God is testing you with this, and then later on it opens bigger doors and pushes you into corridors of power, etc.
Okay. We will hear from this sister who has a look on her face as though she fears she'll be overlooked. And it will not happen. It will not happen. We will definitely hear from you, and then we hear from Dr. Settles, and we will stop there because we have 15 minutes more for our discussion. At the end of our discussion time, we have a 15-minute break, which is what I think my sister is about to tell us.
Yes, so during that 15 minutes, you can stretch another leg or two if you so desire, and then you can visit the canopy and take a drink and a bite, which I'm sure will be very refreshing. Good. Talking about this beer bit of the thing, I'll tell you what. One day somebody walked up to me and said, I'm looking for a smile for an ad, and I think you've got that smile. I said, what is that? It's a party. Beer will be served. When the beer appears, I want to catch your smile. You know, they see the beer, they see your smile acknowledging the beer. So I said, "Oh, you don't have to drink it. Oh, that's all, just the smile." Yeah, the temptation can be very difficult.
That's why you need to
Yes.
be grounded. Can we please hear from the sister in the back?
Hi, Mr. Ajite. Thank you very much for this, for sharing your experiences with us. I think, I think it's important to hear conversations like this, especially for young and upcoming artists all over the world. But I have a little fear, and I just want, my thoughts are not fully formed, but I'm just going to share it. There's a saying where I come from that whatever you continually look at, you eventually become. So and they say this in relation to things like, if I grow up, I don't want to be like my father. I don't want to be like my mother. And so because you have that at the back of your mind, with every step you're taking, you eventually become it without even knowing you become it. So my fear, or the question I'm putting to you now is, how does sharing things like this as a way of curbing character, things like that, how does it not, I don't know, facilitate, encourage subconsciously? Because I mean, it might not necessarily be that, so that's my intention. But because I read that book and I saw that, oh, Aditya has been through this, and oh, I don't want to be like it, and I don't, but it subconsciously gets into your mind, and that becomes your reality. There's that. But my second question, should I say, is how we bring in cultural perceptions or cultural frameworks generally into this Christianity thing, where what we deem morally upright as a people becomes what is morally upright as Christians. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. Where some time ago in Nigeria, if a lady wears trouser, that's a sin because that's not what we are used to. But that became a thing that the Christian faith, encouraged. But down the line and over the years, it's changed. People wear trousers to church now and all of that. So how that space of are we saying this because it is Christian, or are we saying this because that's what we believe as a culture? Thank you.
I think your second question will be best answered by Dr. Styles, but by Dr. Settle, sorry. So I think that the first, in the same vein, what you continually do and engage in is what you become, and that's the marker you're leaving, and so for me is and I always want to give examples. So for example, in my journey, where I went beyond the camera, and so engage in, for example, leading people on in conversations that were reserved for married couples, for example. And then out of the blue, in the journey upon, I come to a realization that, look, this is not who I'm supposed to be as a Christian. There has to be a shift. And so when that shift begins, everything I do from that shift must contradict what I was. And so there was a point where I was craving to even meet those that are engaged with those conversations, for them to see and see for themselves that, hey, this guy is changing, and it's not just about me saying it, but even when they come in and they want to test it, even when I put my book out there, I knew that was not the end. It was only the beginning, because there are people who will just come in forms and shapes with ideas of, let's try and see whether he says what he said he is or he has become. And so that's in itself is a challenge, because you're putting yourself out there for people to like chisel and find out whether you're still grounded, you become grounded now. And for them to realize that, oh no, he's actually, changed. And so it's more of what you repeatedly do that is on the right side. And so I have boundaries now. You want to engage with me personally on that level, and on what? Is it related to my film? No, I can't do that. And sometimes it may sound a bit not friendly, but I need to protect myself, because I'm only me, and there are things that I need to achieve so that I'm not pulled back. Because once you've been there before, the spiritual realm would want to find ways in which to, because he's falling here before, he can fall again. And so you have to consistently do that, and also have accountability persons. I think that one of the things that we don't do very well is have accountability persons, because we are wired to be stand as islands, and that also informs the way we even. That's why we don't even have data for movies that we do. When you want to ask somebody what it costs them in doing a production, they are mute, because the moment they tell you next job, you're going to charge them because you know that they get this much from this bank or whatever. And so people are not willing to share their experiences, share their challenges, because of stigma, because of what you think about them again. And so we need to break that barriers. And that is why repeatedly you have to, if you say this is who you are, it must go beyond just the verbal, but there are actual evidences to show that consistently. And I think that has helped in rewriting the story. And for all those who have interacted with me in the past can clearly see, but it's still a journey that it's still a work in progress. And so it's not that. Doc.
Thank you very much, and thank you. I want to pick from where you left off. I think it's actually a very good, almost concluding point, and related to, you are in the realm of arts. Some of us are on the ministry side, theological side, but the connection I see when you made that statement, I am only me, is very profound, because I think the pulpit space, the ministry space, is also a performance space, potentially. And the dissonance that can be, as you indicated in your talk, between what is proclaimed and professed and then what is lived, the gap can be very large. And I think about this phrase, don't believe your own hype. And the temptation, I think in your profession is very similar, whether in academia or in the pulpit, to believe your own hype, where you start thinking you are what people think you are. And that gap in character is significant. And I'll just give a small anecdote, and then you can respond. And when I was young, my father, I mentioned, was a pastor, and very small church. This lady used to come. She would pop up at our house at unexpected times, odd hours. I didn't know why this lady was doing this. She would just pop up. She would come to church. She would pop up at our house. And at a point, we didn't understand. And at a point, she told us why she did it. And she said that she had never met a pastor who lived in his house the way he preached on the pulpit. So she would show up because she wanted to catch us to see, are you really this way at home like you say you are at church? And for me, when we were growing up, we just thought, we are normal. This is how we live all the time. So we didn't know what the big deal was. The young shall grow. As I grew up and I experienced things in ministry, and I said, hey, some of these pastors you hail, people that you feel are superstars in the ministry, so to speak, just as you have in the film. And then you see behind the scenes, you say, wow. And it becomes a discouragement, to people in their faith. Some people have just deviated not because of the truth of the word of God, but because what they see contradicts that, And I think it's a very bold thing for you to say, coming from that position in the arts industry, to say, these also are struggles that we are having. And I want to prioritize character in my own life. I can only say that I wish that model would be more emulated even within the church space. Because I think people don't mind so much that people have struggles and challenges. What they mind is the pretense that you are something that you are not. And when they see the dissonance, that is what actually creates the challenges for people who are trying to live a faithful Christian life in whatever profession they find themselves. The other last comment is, my wife is here. She was a music student, and she and I have spoken about this much. You know, the culture that is created within that art space, where because you have to push yourself to perform, to act, it creates a subculture where certain things are okay. It's fine. You know, if you are in dance, have to be very comfortable with other people's bodies and touching and all these kinds of things that in the normal space you wouldn't do. In that space, it becomes like the norm. And if you don't do it, then you become the odd person out. And that also comes with a lot of other lifestyle, implications. We all go and drink, we all go and party, and it's normal. This is the lifestyle of the artist. So thank you very much for breaking that barrier for us to see a bit into your world. I appreciate it. That's my comment. I think I don't think there's a simple answer to that, but let me just quickly try to say culture that we all live in obviously influences our Christian faith practice. And our Christian faith practices influence our culture. It's a two-way street. We don't live in a cultureless Christianity. Christianity is always going to have a cultural flair. And so I think the issue is not mistaking certain inherited patterns of Christian behavior and confusing them with the gospel, because those are not necessarily the same. And then 2, Christians need to be very guided and thoughtful about whether they engage or adopt things that they see in the culture around them unthinkingly, all under the guise of we are free in Christ. That's the other side of the equation, because sometimes we are free in Christ has turned to licentiousness. Freedom is not intended to be a license to do whatever you want to do. That's my quick comment on that.
Just to add to that briefly, let me give you just an experience and just for you to ponder over. Here was I get to church the first day that I had this hair messy like that, if you will. And then my senior pastor sees me and is like, "Hi, Ajite, I like your hair." Yeah. And then he moves away. The wife sees me and is like, looks at my hair and is like, and then walks away.
Which one is spiritual?
Thank you.
I'm laughing because it's so real. It happens all the time. But I also wanted to say this. I remember when I first became a Christian, I was in a very small Kojic church. And we were not allowed to wear trousers because that was the rule of the church. We also had to always have something on our head. So I abided by it because I was just now coming into the faith. I went away to a very, very cold place. And I tried my best to keep wearing trousers. But I was so cold. I just had to wear trousers. It made sense to me. So I went and talked it over with the Lord. I said, now, I really need to know the truth here. Am I going to be a worse Christian because I am now wearing trousers than before when I wasn't wearing trousers, And I heard very clearly, look here, you got to take care of yourself, girl. If you go out there in that cold with these dresses on and you don't dress properly, you're going to get sick and die. And so I listened. So sometimes it's a matter of common sense. A lot of times it's a matter of just really seeking in the relationship that you have with Christ to seek and find out, look, is this going to mean I'm a less Christian if I take this silly thing off my head? That kind of stuff. So sometimes you can think about it, you can pray about it, and you can use common sense. I want to really, really thank my brother for this presentation on character. on honing character in an arena where you are playing characters, but the character you play need to be grounded on your first and foremost character. And I think that goes in every arena, but particularly in ministry, in being theologian and pastor. So I'm very, very grateful. You are now welcome to go for tea. Please go for your tea, and please come back in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Just a young man you told me about. Okay. Okay, can the panelists please come up? Okay, thank you for coming back to this this last session that we're having for the day. It's for the morning. Yes, all right. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. We are starting 15 minutes late, so we'll see how we go towards the end, whether we will have time to go over a little bit before we go to lunch at 2:30. I'd like to just introduce our moderator for this panel, and then he will take over from there. Our moderator this afternoon will be Dr. Ernest Afrifra Anane. He is the Acting Dean of Students and Chaplain Research Fellow at Akrofi-Christaller and a Minister of the Presbyterian Church. He holds a PhD in Population Studies from the University of Ghana and an MA in Theology and Mission from Akrofi-Christaller Institute of Theology, Mission, and Culture. Dr. Ernest, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ingrid Walls. And I guess up to about this point, we've had a good time, wonderful discussions, and it's now to do a rectangular table discussion. Exactly. You know, he says to play one must be free, so I need to free my mind so that exactly. Yes, but indeed it is a round table, and at this point we're going to discuss the church and the popular arts, challenges and opportunities for engagement. I have on the panel, straight up I can see the Reverend Joseph JB, who is a pastor and a missionary, married to Angela JB. They are blessed with 4 daughters. 4. Josephine, Joy, Angeline, Christine, and Charlene. Did I get one right? Good. He's passionate about music and other performing arts and how they can be used to advance the Missio Dei. He loves to research around these areas. Being an African theology and African Christianity, world Christianity are key to his research in this quest for identity, relevance, and contextualization. A round of applause for Sofu JB. Okay, then we also have to my immediate right, Klu Etonam Kekeli. He's a Ghanaian artist. I wondered why you wanted to add Ghanaian artist, but maybe you tell us more. A jeweler and a digital storyteller dedicated to using visual narratives to inspire change and foster dialogue. His work explores themes of identity, culture, emotions, and social justice. He is the founder of the Clue, the Jeweler, and Clue Museum creative platforms that merge cultural heritage with modern design. Clue holds a master's degree in museum and gallery practice from University College London in Qatar, where his research focused on how emotions can be used to engage museum visitors, particularly in the context of digital heritage. He also earned a Bachelor of Arts from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and he was awarded the Best Art Symposium at the 3rd Leonora Ewurasi Glover Symposium. So that is the gentleman who designed the art for us the last time. Another one for you. All right. All right, a second one for you. Okay. All right, so we welcome you onto the panel, and then we just had a wonderful time with Pusha. Pusha, Mr. Ajete Anan. Okay. He has a first-class Bachelor of Fine Arts.
his arts is fine. Fine arts degree from the School of Performing Arts at the University of Ghana. And he is currently a lecturer in the acting and is acting at the National Films Television Institute, NAFTI, teaching at the bachelor's degree, diploma levels, and also handles acting certificate courses at the same institution. So another round of applause for our panelists. All right. So at this point, we want to see how what we have discussed so far really connect. More importantly, how the artists in the Christian arena leave out everything we've talked about, character and the rest. But to start and to roll, I want to ask our panelists, and I don't know who would want to go first. Everyone will have its own piece. As an artist and a Christian, what is that one challenge you have experienced or observed in dealing with the church or the expectations of Christians? Okay, so that we'll be sure the question went out well. As an artist and a Christian, what is that one challenge you have experienced or observed in dealing with the church or the expectations of Christians?
I think my first experience, and that which had a, of course, direct connection with the field in which I am in as an actor, a performer, was when I first went into this church. And when I stepped, before I entered the chapel, a gentleman recognized me. I put him in middle-aged, and then he had this, he recognized me, obviously, and he was like, "Pusha, hey, into bar, sorry." Meaning, so you also come to church? So he caught himself, because I think he was thinking that he wasn't expecting himself to say it. And so I also felt a bit uncomfortable and awkward. And then he said, "Oh," and he said, "Media grow, I'm playing, I'm just joking." But I knew what was in the back of his mind. And unfortunately for me, I got looks that communicated same or similar or even worse. And the moment people recognized that it was me, then they began, I remember those who had daughters would shift a bit closer to their daughter or shift them closer quietly without offending me. And I noticed all these because part of our work is to observe, because that's where we build, we get our information to play characters. And I realized that it was a bigger thing than I expected. Take the woman who also was with his young boy who recognized me, and the boy took off, came to hug me because she's recognized his TV personality. And the mother is like, "Who the hell is this?" And then she draws closer and she recognizes that it's me. And then she's like, "Come on, stay away from such rascals." And then, when it happened, I thought she was joking, because normally people would put that act and then after they would say, "Oh, hi, Pusha, good to meet you." But I turned and she had this look like, that kind of look. And so I got the message. So the thinking that we are what we play, the characters that we live are we. And the people have made remarks that, no, he can't be that good playing that character if he is not it in real life. And so the fact that it's a skill that you've honed or you've been trained is non-existent for them. You have to be bad to play bad. And so that's the tag that, I'm categorized as such. And that was my steps, initial steps in that church, to be able to, try to, it was more like a challenge that I needed to overcome. Daily trying to prove myself that I'm not the character that I play. I'm different. I'm this, and sometimes it was my daily thing. Instead of focusing on the word and who I'm supposed to be and what my calling is, I was more engaged in trying to prove people wrong, and it really affected my foundation a bit. And I mean, a few people that I knew who were in that same space, really fell out along the way. They can't live in this space where there's always second guessing. What would you do? That kind of thing. So that was my challenge with regarding the question.
Etonam to go. And whilst you reflect on that question, maybe a follow-up to you as a pastor, how you will react to an usher in your church who had a stern face as an artist like this. Right.
Okay, thank you. I would want to begin by trying to identify myself as an artist. It took me quite a while to create a narrative for myself in relation to who an artist is, because the general understanding of an artist is boiled down to somebody who paints, somebody who acts, somebody who, for example, creates works of art. But engaging myself over the period of time, I have gotten to understand that each and every individual is an artist foremost, because it is an identity, and then further you can push it through a form. So a doctor is an artist, however, it is only through an expression of a form, and it's taking us quite an amount of time to get there. And so one challenge I had, or I'm having with the church, for example, has to be with the fact that they identify me as an artist as somebody who is undervalued, first and foremost. So the perspective they approach me with is the fact that, oh, he does art. However, if the understanding of who an artist is engaged further, then they can begin to reevaluate certain standards and begin to engage me differently. But it is quite obvious that as an artist, one thing that the church realizes is the fact that you are quite expensive. They do acknowledge that. So in terms of engaging you, they first and foremost feel like, can we really pay this individual? And so if they realize that it's going to be quite a challenge, the best thing they could do is undervalue you. But I strongly believe that in terms of the understanding where the church sits, it has a lot of resources at its disposal. And it takes a lot of humility for the church to begin to realize this. And I am grateful for such a platform that we're having a discussion like this, because these are challenges that we face every day within the church. And pushing it a little further, I would say that the church is one of the few institutions where it has an audience, a variety of resources at their disposal. I would say that, for example, for me to have met a figure like Ajite Anand and Pastor JB, I may have had to pay in some other circles to meet them. But because of the wealth of the church, I can be here and sit with them and have a discussion. But the church seems to have this narrative that it's under-resourced, and literally Uncle Ajite and Pastor JB are going to share wealth of knowledge with all of us for free. It's unpaid for. And so I think that it is a very huge challenge in terms of the general understanding which an artist is placed in terms of the light. And we have to begin to reorient our understanding of an artist, because I strongly believe that it is the highest form of expression. And that is where God starts from. He says, I am. Anytime he's trying to identify himself, it is within the highest form of expression. So even a doctor, to get to that highest form of a doctor, he has to be an artist. But the artist has been put on a pedestal far below its real value.
Right, so value, from no value to being expensive. Interesting. Also for JB.
So one of the common things that I've experienced is, so I do different things. Gospel artist, yes, worship leader, choir director, but also working with the choreography team and the drama team. Now, sometimes these people will prepare, literally negotiate for a slot on the service, and then just before they come up, today you are not ministering, there's no time. We need time for the word of God.
No time for dancing.
The word of God, as if they were coming to share what from the Book of Mormons or something. So, I mean, and it happens so often, and then they get broken, they stop coming for rehearsals. I mean, because they literally negotiated and they said, no, this week is packed. Then eventually they get a slot, and then they're just shuttered like that. And it happens over and again. They feel used. And usually there's nobody assigned to them who understands or can disciple or shepherd them. And I think throughout the discussion today, it has come up several times. So it's like, a group of people who like to dance will just get together and emerge and start doing this. And then they are faced with these challenges, and then eventually they'll fizzle out. And when they fizzle out, they are also going into what has been described as the secular space. Of course, we at Akrofi have always debunked this, that the sacred secular divide is not biblical. Because if you look in the Bible, there is nothing like sacred and secular. All people are supposed to live in recognition of the Creator, as we were told this morning. And so all the things we do are supposed to bring glory to the Creator. So but immediately you send those people back by maltreating them in the church, then it's like they have now rebelled against the church. They have gone into the forbidden land, and eventually they are cut off. And what ends up happening is they stop coming to church completely.
Right, I get you. And I want to ask, related to that, what could be probably the difficulty with the church? Examples say that, well, we gave you 5 minutes. I mean, it's time for us to have the choreography, and it's no longer coming on. What could be some of the challenges? I think probably maybe the church will have also experienced some difficulties. For instance, it's time to have choreography, and they are now looking for the music person to play the song, and the song is not on course, and all of that. So some of those things probably position the church in a certain arena as against how we receive the artists into the church.
Okay, so yes, there are those teething problems with various ministries. But then the fundamental problem is, why does the choir perform better? Usually there's a choir master. Usually there's a lot more resources made available to the choir, but the choreography team will not have those resources. The guy doing the sound, because the pastor doesn't respect the ministry of the choreography team, doesn't remember where he put their track. So the problem is not from the choreography team, but the whole system is set up to disrespect them. So those teething problems, yes, they are an issue. But I have actually worked with a group that has honed their skills, approached it professionally, and yet sometimes we used to have a group on Tech Campus travel to Accra to minister and actually get shut down like that. Yeah.
Especially when it has to be in some traditional churches. Exactly. You see, I said traditional churches. Exactly. But any one of you can respond to any of the comments that have come on board. Yeah. So how about also the fact that, and I mean, I want to understand the fact that the difficulty with the church accepting the artist. And I think I need to hammer on that more, because if the artist includes character, preparation, all the other aspects to, in quote, to prove we are worth a point in the worship of the church, I believe that the church will begin to appreciate that. But there are instances where that is not done. All right? Sometimes you ask people to come and dance, or it's time to dance, and people over dance, or they under dance. But I mean, what I'm trying to say is that what can we do to help the church appreciate the value of the artist? I think that's the point I'm driving at. Yeah.
I think my comment on that would be limiting the level of interference in when you assign roles, especially in departments like maybe the choreography department or the dramatic arts, for example, where the visionaries or the head pastor would want to dictate as to how a certain expression should look like. When you have abled, skilled persons, artists who have been assigned to take charge, and it connotes a sense of we don't really value your skill, because sometimes there's a contradiction of what you feel should go on stage, but then the medium in getting there is a skilled area. And so when I come in to say that, well, for us to achieve this and for it to be effective, we have to go through this form. But then it's like, no, it has to be this way. And then there's a conflict. And so when you don't allow artists to be free and play, you will not note the excesses for you to then, as it were, prune and then guide. What happens is that they would give you what you want, but then express that out there. And I think that's the challenge that we've had since the days of Whitney Houston, where she began in the church space and then she's thrown into the secular space because there were certain limitations that kept them imprisoned and needed expression. And if we don't allow, especially in this case, young people who are in most of these departments to express themselves, for us to then, guide and prune, then what we're doing is that in the field where we do our larger assignment, or where we're supposed to translate theory into practice, then we lose them. And so they go in there unprotected, not with an informed, doctrine, and they just live out there. And so I think that there should be a relationship and a partnership between heads of these religious bodies and those who have been assigned roles to be able to nurture young people in the specific art form, so that we all see ourselves as doing the work of God, other than I have to dictate because I'm the head pastor and this is how it should go. But then sometimes it contradicts what the forms are. So that relationship is not fluid. It doesn't exist most of the time. We should have that respect each other's input as achieving something that would impact our audiences. That is what I think.
I want to speak to the church in terms of the organizational structure and how the church tends to relate with artists, for example. I'll use, just as an observant person, over the years within how the service goes. So, for example, we come in, we have the opening prayer. In some churches, then they go into praise and worship, and then there's the offering before the preaching, and then the second offering, and then announcement. But as an artist, one thing that we do is we're very observant individuals, and so we pay attention to human behaviors, for example. And so if the church is going to be able to take importantly, evaluation. And in the process of evaluating, the church shows the artist that he is, or the institution is quite humble because it's seeking for views and opinions. The church may realize that, for example, we exude a lot of energy when we dance, and then we get tired and we have a seat, and that is when the men of God climb the pulpit to preach. But after 20 minutes, it's a struggle because we're tired. And that is the reality, because according to research, we understand that after 40 minutes, we lose concentration. And that is it. So is there a need, for example, for us to reevaluate our structure of service at a governance level? Things like this are conversations that maybe the artists may see, but unfortunately, because there are no real avenues for you to express and share, and that is why I truly believe that this is very different from what we experience in churches, where the artist is being paid much attention to share things like this.
What forms do you think the artist can use to share?
So I believe that a tool like evaluation is one, a symposium like this is one, but ultimately, if the artist is radical enough, then he can choose his form of art, and then in a very sensitive and respectable way, portray it to our, I would say, our elders, because sometimes the youth are associated with folly, but it's just the fact that we are within a much younger generation and tend to feel things. We struggle with certain things within the church. Yeah, we do struggle. And generally, the church was associated with sacred knowledge. But in our time, the knowledge is on Instagram. It's on TikTok. And so we are struggling to find ourselves in the church, because it seems that the kind of knowledge we would wish to have from the church, we are not getting, and we'll go elsewhere. And just like Uncle Ajite said with Whitney Houston, she'll go outside and then go and then express herself.
Yeah, I just wanted to. So, from what he's saying, so let's say instead of the 40-minute sermon, you had worked with the dramatic arts team to bring portions of your sermon to life in a short skit, even if it's 5 minutes. It will change the way the service will go. And if you're able to key in the choir with an appropriate song, bam, the message is there. But somehow, most pastors have been trained to think, I call it the tyranny of the text. The more words you say, the more your congregation will change. And we know that it's not true. It doesn't happen. We preach the same sermon over and again, and they haven't changed. And, I did a research on Ebo White's theater. And the testimonies that come from people who are almost divorcing come to watch a play, and they go back and they repair their marriage. A play that, but I mean, and the testimonies, I recorded several testimonies, and because there were people's personal messages to him, he couldn't share them all with me, but he gave me just like 4 or 5, and so profound. And the actors had no idea they were having this impact on. But just putting that whole thing together to send that message, and we can do it because we have these people in the church. And just to piggyback on what Ajete was saying, the pastor feels like he has to micromanage the people because he hasn't discipled them to make the right choices. If you disciple them and help them to make those choices, you don't have to fear what they will bring on stage, because They know God's word. They know the boundaries. And Andrew Walls will tell you that theology is risky business. Every time we try to speak for God, we are going to venture into areas that we haven't planned for. And that is the reality. And yet, it is something that we must do. And our artists are theologians. They are going to share God's word. So we need to empower them, disciple them, and release them to explore with different artistic. I mean, he's talking about TikTok. I'm not sure any church is taking TikTok seriously. And if we would empower our dramatic arts departments to create TikTok skits that speak the word, we wouldn't even be worried about the times on the church stage, because they have an audience of millions of people watching them. So, I mean, there's so much more that we.
All right. So, I guess at this point, you're also thinking of something you want to add a comment. Can I have... okay, way from the back, then we come to... Okay.
Very interesting conversations. You know, there's a practical example in the room about theology and the arts and the freedom of the artists. About 2 years ago, we did the same conference, and I was asked to do a performance. And we performed the story of creation from the folk tale perspective. And as part of our performance, so I'm doing the storytelling, there's enactment going, the singing and everything. On top of everything, we had a character called God who was standing there, who was supposed to be painting creation. We asked, again, restrictions, we asked that this is what you must paint. Paint us a nice landscape. As the story of creation is unfolding, you are developing the landscape. Ayaba, it is the Garden of Eden. This artist decided to tell his own creation story. What is his creation story? That a woman should birth creation, which is also folk. And so he drew this woman in the birthing posture, taking it from the south, with creation exiting the gateways. The idea of this painting was to give it as a gift to Akrofi to take with them. But you see, this bohemian artist is somebody who will come to my office every week, at least every Monday, to receive prayers. He says he will not go to church, but he believes in my prayers. But it is a good place to start from. So I engage him on that. But he decided that the woman must give birth to his creation. And so as we speak, the painting was done and finished. But did Akrofi take the painting? The painting is stranded in my house. Because my husband is a painter, and it doesn't fall within his scope or his thematic concerns. What shall I do? So this is my concern. We agreed to do landscape. The human being decided that the woman must give birth to the landscape. So we are talking about issues I should stand here, Emma. We are talking about issues of tangible, experiences, so that we all rethink what we are thinking in context.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much. I think that I'm rethinking and drama in church service. On the 24th night, that was the last 2 years, so we had a drama of Jesus' birth. And the issue, or what I realized, was that the number that came that evening was much more than some of the programs that we had a lot of time organizing. And the people that came were not church members. Well, you have a lot of time to bring them along. So there was a child who was to act as a gong beater. So the mother was not a church member. So she came. And after the play, we saw the mother, the 25th, she came to church. And lo and behold, she has become part of the church. And I've been thinking today that I've preached, but I want the people that have come to me that, today I've raised my hands. I'm a Christian. Maybe it's in them, but that one is visual. Everybody has seen the church that it was out of that she has become part of the church. I'm praying that as we go, maybe we adding. I'm thinking about it, but how to push them sometimes when we meet the leaders, how to use drama and this. Oh no. But we pray that as we go, we can push these things. It's a testimony, and that's good. Thanks.
Maybe pastoral institutions need to know how to nurture that aspect of making the pastor appreciate art in their sermons. That can be one way to get it out there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I will have truly the place again.
Okay.
Please, an announcement. Because of our partners online, it will be a great idea for contributors or speakers to come here so that they can see us all and feel very much a part of it. So as I have the mic now, I have been prompted to share an experience, and so I'm doing so precon. Oh, I'm not taking advantage of being MC. Oh, why are you saying that? You know? Oh.
We are in a
on Christmas Day last year, I got invited to a church. Nearly everybody here knows that I do storytelling, traditional storytelling. So there's this church in East Legon. They invited me and said, today is Christmas Day. We will have service for children. It's Children's Day. But we want them to be engaged differently. The message, yes, but differently. So we would like you to come and have a storytelling session with the children. And I did. I told 3 stories within the time and backed it with scripture. Indigenous Ghanaian stories, but they fitted it fairly and squarely with scripture. And so it is not every time that the art is aggressively contradictory. Thank you. No more.
I don't believe that for one moment. Besides, we like hearing from you. Anyway, my comment, I have a couple of comments I want to make. First one has to do with fear. Because a lot of times what I see in the church, or what I think a lot of Christians are experiencing, has to do with fear. Fear of losing authority. Fear of losing position. Fear of the sphere of their fiefdoms becoming a little bit smaller. There's a lot of fear in the church and in Christians. That's the first thing that I noticed. So I think there's a lot of fear of the artist as a potential competitor. Fear of the artist who will come in and maybe take over will become the person whom the people in the congregation will start looking to more than the pastor himself, or more than whomever else is in the church. So there's a real fear of that. And then there's a fear, I think, in understanding, how is the doctor an artist? How is the teacher an artist? How is the educator an artist? How is the pastor an artist? How is the theologian an artist? How could it be that we are all artists, but we don't function in an artistic way? We don't express ourselves artistically, yet we are all artists because we're made in the image of the ultimate creator himself, the ultimate artist himself. How can the church tackle that issue? And then the last thing is the times they are changing. So the structures within the church have to change. The structures within our organizations have to change to accommodate the changes that are taking place. We are afraid of changing the structures. Again, what are we going to lose if we change the structures? What are we going to end up with if the structures get transformed? So there's all this fear on so many different levels. And how do we address it? We're afraid of talking about the fear. So how do we really address it?
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so two more, then we come back to the... Yes, you come, but let's hear from here first. Okay.
I love this topic. So in my life, I've been the leader of drama ministry. I've had skit teams go out to different churches, and I've also performed in church dramas. And one of the things I noticed is that I'm never asked a profession of faith. I'm never asked if I understand where the church stands. So for example, with a church that I attended for several years, where I was the drama ministry leader, I put something on stage that upset so many people. And of course, I'm an artist. I'm pushing boundaries. I don't care if you're upset. That's how I felt. And while the young people loved it, the older people came after me. And since then, I was censored. And I was upset. It took me a while to understand that there are certain stages. There are stages like the National Theater, and then there's the stage of the church. You can't always do the same thing on those stages. I had to learn that. But I feel like I wasn't onboarded properly. Like you said, discipleship. The church should have said, here are our values. This is what we're expecting from you as an artist. And then I can work within those parameters. And so I think my question is, how do churches onboard their artists? How do they let the artists know these are our values? Because you can't assume that the artist knows your values or that artist shares your values. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a testimony and a question. In 1990, I was sent to Ho in the Volta region, that's my own region, to start the Youth for Christ program there. And the testimony is that reaching out to the youth, both in the church and outside the church, it took drama and music. Drama and music. And they will come from all the churches around and come from the communities to come and watch the drama. For the music, it's like quarterly music jamborees or music festivals on holidays. And the youth will come, and the various church choirs will come and sing. And the youth will come in their numbers. Maoli School, Assembly Hall, and other event centers were filled to capacity. And the word of God was shared, and many gave their life to Christ. But the question I want to ask is, why the exclusive promotion of STEM education? Is that not killing the arts, the creative arts? Have we thought about that, I don't know, we are here as academicians. What is really behind the idea of the exclusive promotion of STEM education to the detriment of the arts, the creative arts? Thank you very much.
I learned there is an addition of an A to the STEM. So now it's now STEAM. So yeah, and the A is the arts. So hopefully in some years ahead, we should see the arts coming up. Anyway.
Thank you. I was going to say exactly the same thing. So instead of STEM, we have STEAM, the A representing the arts. And it's something I'm really passionate about because in everyday life, science and art always go together. So a simple example would be this table. So the design of the table would be art, but the way it's put together, the properties of the material, and so on and so forth is the science. But when we see the object, we don't really separate the science from the art. It works together. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so as it is now, what she wanted to say is that creativity is the pivot around which all learning must spin. Creativity is the pivot around which all learning, including theology, must spin.
Yeah, so I want to tell our brother that you should not be there as in person for people to fear you as an artist. And what I'm going to say, I wish that all of us will think deep about it. There was a time I had the opportunity to preach. My wife is a minister, a reverend minister. So because of my line of preaching, this song came in mind by Bob Marley. This song that goes, everyone is crying for peace, yet no one is crying for justice. And after the sermon, some people were not too happy that I sang Bob Marley song in the church. Another time, there was this Ghanaian artist too. It was getting to Christmas, and this song, Yebo Dada Yen Chembronyo. Oh, Yebo Dada Yen. So that one too came in. And from that time, people have seen me to be somebody who likes secular things, bringing secular things to the church. So let's consider that too. Brother Ajete, you shouldn't be there as in person for people to hear. Even if you hear the song of an artist, it's a problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll have the very last comment so we can hear our panelists if they have any comments to what we have shared.
This idea of coming outside. Amen. All right, I think I'm just going to continue what you said earlier about knowing our audience and knowing what is right for the audience. There's something my father would always say. My father is a pastor, and he says that the message we preach to the unbeliever is the same message we teach to the believer, just that it's in depth. So when we as artists want to talk to unbelievers and say, okay, this is what we're telling you, we can employ a lot of dramatic elements that might not necessarily jump at them in any way that will be off-putting. But when we are among believers, and especially people that are very conservative, it's important to know. I think the end goal is the salvation of souls. The end goal is to make sure that the gospel is heard and believed and well received. So if that's the intention, I don't think any artist will deliberately not want to preach Christ or be an antichrist, for lack of a better word. Yes. So I just think that knowing who the audience is very important. But because of this conversation, I'm reminded of what Dr. Siatu was saying earlier this morning. Sito, I'm so sorry. So Sito was saying this morning about the theology of the art and the art of the theology. And it felt like it was a little not resolved in my head. Where you talked about artists introducing secular things into the church. So where do we draw the line? Okay, what is to be done and what is not to be done in the church? Is it such a big deal? How far can you go before? I think those discussions are very important to have with pastors, but also with young people and yeah, I think yes.
Okay, you asked with pastors, so let's hear the pastor and we hear the artist.
So the thing about Christianity is we receive Christ when we already have a culture. We are already singing those songs. We already know Bob Marley, and then we give our lives to Christ. Bob Marley does not disappear from our minds. So the thing about Christianity is, and this right from the onset of Christianity, how do we turn our cultures towards Christ? How do we live our lives to be like Christ, regardless of all the baggage that we are carrying? And that is one of the things we do at Akrofi, trying to navigate this. And it is something that every Christian has to do on their own, churches have to do on their own, but even more so, collectively as people groups, we need to navigate this. And yet for many people, the way they, and I think this morning Dr. Settles highlighted sort of a guarding of the boundaries, so much so that the gospel and culture interaction doesn't really happen. So, for instance, from Scripture Union, you've been told that secular song, don't sing secular song, without exploring what does it really mean to say a secular song. Ba ba black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, it's secular by the definition of. So all our children are singing secular songs already. But I think that the thinking behind it is not don't sing secular songs, but certain songs do not tally with your newfound life in Christ. And so avoid those songs. So you can clearly hear Bob Marley prophesying, but because of the sacred secular divide, you are conflicted as to how to use Bob Marley. And that is gospel and culture engagement. We need to begin to unpack some of these things, especially for the younger generation, because they have inquiry minds. They are asking more questions that we had don't sing secular and we took it, followed it hook, line, and sinker. They are not. So how, I don't want to turn it into a theology lecture, but the disciples in Corinth, they are going to dinner. Meat is put on the table. The meat was most likely sacrificed in the temple the day before, and they went to the market near the temple and bought it and served it. Am I sinning by eating it? It's a similar thing we are dealing with. And so Paul addresses it in 1 Corinthians chapter 8. Meat sacrificed to idols. Do I eat? Do I not eat? He said, oh, but idols are nothing. So really, there's no issue. But someone thinks there's an issue. If that person eats it, there's a problem. You understand? So these are conversations that we need to have. We need to unpack these. And it doesn't get simple because different things are coming up. Most Christians are reactionary and anything new is the devil. When the internet came, it was 666. Now TikTok has come. Everything that comes, our first reaction is, hey. And then, I know, AI. So by the time we start to engage with these cultures, it's too late. So it's something we need to, as pastors. I'm not sure I'm answering the question, but I'm just trying to throw the net a bit wider so we understand the magnitude of the issues. And the sacred secular divide also makes people like this feel ostracized, or it's like when you get to that, their sideline, they have crossed the boundary. and yet they are coming to School of Performing Arts to do what? To go and work professionally. Why is a banker not cut off from our church? He's working in a secular space. They're all working in secular spaces except the artist who works in it. So again, we need to
exactly, the discipleship should be extended to the pastors, not only the artists. So whilst you share your comments on what have been discussed so far, maybe one more question to think about is, how should the church disciple you as artists so that we know how to do it? I mean, in addition to what you're already thinking of, responding to what is on the floor, in what areas do you think that if the church is going to focus on nurturing that artist in the church, we can really have much value for the artist?
I would like to take it from two angles, which has to do with interpretation and intelligence. And as part of my study, I got to realize that interpretation has a very important role in terms of communication. And so the way I'm speaking now may not entirely sound the same to every individual here, because on existing protocols of culture and the way we see or perceive life. And so in terms of engaging the artist, interpretation is very important. Just like how Doc said, they gave the artist a script, he interpreted it in a very different way and expressed it. However, we have all come to understand that in terms of a goal or a purpose, we all have to come to one understanding to achieve that goal. So if we are struggling with understanding the goal, then we will also struggle with producing what we are ought to produce. And so clarity is very important when it comes to interpretation. And the general understanding within arts and museum practice is that if you are trying to communicate, try as much as possible, going back to the point Reverend Settles said about kids, try to make your point as though you are speaking to an 8-year-old. Do not use words or phrases that will cause contradictions or misunderstandings. So as much as we are trying to be flamboyant and all this, it is plain English, simple interpretations. Do not give room for different understandings and people to hover and as direct as possible. That is the best way to communicate. And so as an artist, I believe strongly that engaging with the church should be open. And just like Uncle Ajite did, sharing vulnerabilities, because transparency, it's key, because we will try to figure things out in our own way, because that's what we do. We are artists. We'll try to, you don't say it, we'll go behind the scenes trying to interpret it in various ways, various means. But putting it in plain language for the artist is like gold, and then you'll be able to get the results that you're looking for.
Just to quickly add to that, I mean, beyond all that, it's also partnership, which should be, should be the basis, because I think that we're all the body of Christ, and we all have diverse ways in which we contribute our quota to ensure that we have a successful service, even if we're going to have a Sunday service. But I would also want to see the church deliberately going out there and bringing maybe the latest dance in the secular space onto the stage, but pruned and refined for the stage sometimes, because sometimes they're excesses. When you look at the kind of dance that goes on in maybe a place like Jamestown space, it's a bit wild, but this is the new form. How do we give that same feel and energy, but pruned in a way that is still acceptable in the space of the church, that still attracts the young people, because otherwise they'll get it elsewhere? So if these young people are in church and they can see the dance that excites them on stage, Azonto, for example, without attaching too many connotations to it as, it's from the devilish realm, it's from, we can't begin to change that narrative of, this dance is not fit for, it's not Christian. And because otherwise then we lose our youth to those spaces, and they fish out for that, and they can't even partake in dramatic arts or in the choreographies because it's not accepted. And so we need to find ways in which we can partner to really shift the focus from not just the social media spaces or out there, but onto the stage of the church as an extension of the pulpit, of the message of the word, and that's where I want us to be more pragmatic and a bit bold, if you will, for us to reach out to people out there, because people need to belong. And I feel that you're singing my song, even though it's through a different medium, but I can still relate and connect. And that's what we also do as artists when we're doing movies and characterization. We go out there, we observe the way people behave, and we do not come and give you everything graphic. And sometimes, I always have a problem with really giving you specifically what it is in real life. And so, for example, if you have an intimate scene, you depict it as you would behind closed doors. There it becomes a bit offensive. It becomes, you're going into a realm of maybe porn, for example. And those are the boundaries that we need to be careful about. But how do we still bring that reality which people are aware of, without still being offensive and still acceptable, that people can still relate, and then the message is not lost. And I think that those are the conversations that we need to begin to have as partners in the body of Christ, as it were. Yeah.
So I work with a children ministry called Awana, and we have 3 words: belong, believe, become. If they don't feel like they belong, forget it. Once they feel like they belong, they can now believe and become the people, the Christ-like people we want. And I think for many creatives, they're just looking for a place to belong. And yet, like your pastor's wife, sometimes because of the way she has been trained, this type of hair, so so to create that space where all the creatives feel like they belong is very difficult for us as a church, but we need to make that effort to make them feel like they belong. And then the things that we want them to learn, they can now believe, and then they'll be on the path to becoming the Christians or the ministers that we want them to become. And I think that's how I'll respond to that.
A round of applause for our panelists. And I believe strongly that they have highlighted the challenges that a church really need to take a look at. And opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, whilst this was going on, I was thinking about the consultation, and I'm thinking that at that point, what we have gleaned from the lesson so far will form some of the basis for the projects and the research that would want to move on that. So thank you, Reverend Joseph JB. Thank you, Brother Kekeli. Thank you, Uncle Pusha. Yeah. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for your comments. Thanks to me. Yeah, the moderator for the day. Moderator, anyway. We close. All right, so it's time for lunch.
So I'm not the moderator, but I'm stepping in briefly just to also, if you have not done the registration, make sure you do that. We need to capture your details. Thank you very much. God bless you. See